The day I showed up at his ranch, I was wearing my best blazer and heels that immediately sank into the dirt, thinking about nothing more than securing my inheritance and surviving the next 24 hours. I had no idea that within a week, my entire life would shatter because of one secret I never saw coming. My name is Diana Castellano. I am 28 years old, and for the past 5 years, I have been building my family's tech agriculture company in Boulder, Colorado. It's not a traditional business, just cutting-edge soil monitoring systems, drone technology, and sustainable farming solutions that my grandmother pioneered. She died last spring from cancer, and overnight, everything she built landed on my shoulders according to the terms of her will. I stayed because this company is the last piece of her I have left. Selling it was never an option. Life in Boulder is fast but isolating. I wake up to conference calls with investors, navigate board politics with people twice my age, and hope the quarterly reports show mercy on our bottom line. I'm not broke, but the company burns through cash. Most days it's just me, my laptop, and the endless Colorado sky visible through my office window. That afternoon in late March felt different. It was unseasonably cold, close to 40 degrees, mountain air carrying the smell of pine and impending snow. I was in my office reviewing contracts when my lawyer called with devastating news. My grandmother's will had a clause I'd missed. I had to be married by my 29th birthday, which was tomorrow, or control of Castellano Agritech would pass to the board, led by Victor Kane, a venture capitalist who wanted to strip the company for parts. I had 24 hours. Panic set in immediately. My boyfriend of 2 years, Marcus, had left me 3 months ago when I chose the company over moving to New York with him. I had no prospects, no time, and no options. Then I remembered the file on my desk, a property dispute with a small ranch in western Colorado that bordered our test fields. The owner, Nathaniel Hayes, 31, independent rancher, unmarried according to public records. I drove 4 hours through mountain passes, my hands shaking on the wheel. The ranch appeared suddenly around a bend, weathered fences, a red barn, cattle grazing peacefully. A man in dusty jeans and a flannel shirt was by the barn, his dark hair curling slightly at the edges under a worn cap, working on what looked like a water pump. He was tall and lean, his movements efficient and practiced. I stepped out of my SUV, my heels sinking immediately. He looked up, wiped his hands on his jeans, and walked toward me with an expression somewhere between curious and suspicious. "Are you Nathaniel Hayes?" I asked, my voice shakier than I wanted. He nodded slowly. "That's me. You're the one with the boundary dispute." I took a breath, looked around at the simple, honest life he'd built, then looked straight at him. "My name is Diana Castellano. I need a husband by tomorrow." He froze, his eyes widening. For a second, I thought he'd laugh or tell me to leave, but something in my desperation must have shown. "You need what?" I pulled out the folder, explaining everything. The will, the deadline, Victor's plans to gut the company and eliminate the sustainable farming programs my grandmother died protecting. Nathaniel listened, his expression unreadable. "Why me?" he finally asked. "You don't even know me." "Your ranch borders our test fields. I researched you. You're independent, you can't be bought, and according to every record I could find, you're single." I hesitated. "My ex-boyfriend left when I put the company first. Victor would destroy everything my grandmother built. I'm desperate." Nathaniel leaned against the fence. "I need to think about this." "I don't have time," I said, adding how my voice cracked. "I'll pay you, whatever you want. After I secure the board, we can quietly annul it." He looked at me for a long moment. "I'm not doing this for money. If I agree, there are no lies between us. And if someone's going to investigate this marriage, I need to know you're someone I can trust." "Deal," I said, relief flooding through me. We shook hands right there by the barn, and his palm was rough and warm against my smooth skin. I didn't know it then, but that handshake was sealing something far more complicated than either of us understood. The next morning felt surreal, like I was moving through someone else's life. Nathaniel and I drove to the county courthouse together just after sunrise. The sky was gray over the mountains, and the road was empty except for the hum of my SUV. Neither of us talked much, not because it was awkward, but because we both understood how strange this was. Two strangers heading to get married with no love story, no family gathered, no celebration waiting afterward. The courthouse in Delta was small and plain. A stone building with flags out front and a few cars in the parking lot. My lawyer met us there along with one of Nathaniel's neighbors, an older woman named Bate, who agreed to be a witness after Nathaniel promised to explain later. The ceremony itself was fast. Simple silver bands I'd bought at a jewelry store that morning. We signed our names, shook the judge's hand, and just like that, Nathaniel Hayes became my husband. I looked at him as we walked out. He looked calm, but his jaw was tight, like he was processing what he'd just agreed to. This wasn't how anyone imagined starting a marriage, especially not someone like me, but it was done. By evening, the paperwork was filed. My legal team worked fast. Statements went out to the board confirming the will had been satisfied. On the drive back to Boulder, I stared out the window at the mountain landscape, my fingers tapping nervously against my knee. "I appreciate this, Nathaniel," I said quietly, "more than you know." "I just want things clear," he replied, his eyes on the road. "If this is going to work, we need boundaries." I nodded, agreed. That night, he stayed in my guest room. My apartment felt strange with someone else in it. I slept poorly, replaying everything, wondering if I'd just made the smartest or dumbest decision of my life. He came down the next morning dressed in clean jeans and a sweater that made him look softer somehow. "Victor's already moving," I said, showing him my phone. "He hired investigators. If this marriage looks fake, he'll challenge it in court. You'll need to stay here full-time for a while." His face tightened, but he nodded. The first few days were awkward. Our lives couldn't have been more different. I was up early taking calls with investors, reviewing reports, managing crises. Nathaniel started his days later, making coffee in my fancy machine and looking uncomfortable in the modern space. He'd pace, fidget, then disappear for long walks. His voice was quiet when we spoke, measured, while I talked fast and constant, my mind always 3 steps ahead. We barely talked beyond the basics. "Coffee's ready. The Wi-Fi password is on the fridge. I'll be late tonight." It felt like 2 separate worlds colliding badly. Then on the 3rd day, something shifted. I came home exhausted from a brutal board meeting to find Nathaniel cooking in my kitchen, badly. The smoke alarm was going off. He was cursing under his breath, and somehow it made me laugh for the first time in months. "Need help," I offered. He handed me a spatula, looking relieved. "Please." We talked while we cooked. He told me about his ranch, about losing his parents young and learning to survive alone. I told him about my grandmother's vision, about the pressure of living up to her legacy. Something softened between us. The pressure came fast after that. Victor filed a petition questioning our marriage. Articles appeared online, painting Nathaniel as a gold digger, me as desperate and pathetic. Investigators showed up asking neighbors questions. I handled it head-on, defending us publicly, tying my reputation to his completely. Then came the sabotage. One morning, our main server facility was hacked. Years of research data nearly destroyed. Nathaniel's face hardened when I told him. "It's him," he said. "He's escalating." The real breaking point came a week later. I received an envelope at the office, no return address. Inside were photos, recent photos, of Nathaniel with another woman, at a restaurant, holding hands, kissing. My world stopped. I drove home in a daze, the photos burning in my bag. Nathaniel was on the couch when I walked in, and I threw the envelope at him without a word. He opened it. His face went pale, then red, then settled into something that looked like resignation. "Let me explain," he said quietly. "You're already married," I said, my voice flat. "That's what the investigator found, isn't it? That's why you looked so uncomfortable those first days." He closed his eyes. "Separated, officially separated for 8 months. The divorce papers are filed, but Colorado has a 6-month waiting period. It's not final yet." "Our marriage is invalid." I felt numb. Everything I did, it doesn't matter. "Diana." "Who is she?" I demanded, pointing at the photos. "That's Alexis, my soon-to-be ex-wife. She showed up last week. She wants to reconcile." Nathaniel's voice cracked. "I told her I couldn't. I told her I was married to you." "But you're not legally. Not really." He stood up, his eyes suddenly fierce. "The investigator doesn't know yet. The records aren't public. Alexis won't tell anyone. She still loves me. She'd never hurt me like that. We have time to fix this." "How?" I was shaking now. "My grandmothers will require me to be legally married. If Victor finds out." "Then we make it real," Nathaniel said. "My divorce finalizes in 3 weeks. We remarry immediately after. We backdate documents if we have to. We make this work." I stared at him. "Why? You could walk away right now. This isn't your problem." He stepped closer. "Because somewhere in the past week, this stopped being just a deal. Because Victor tried to destroy your data and you fought like hell to save it. Because when you laugh, really laugh, it's the most honest thing I've ever seen. Because," he stopped, swallowing hard, "because I want to stay." The words hung between us, dangerous and real. "Your wife wants you back," I whispered. "My *X wants me back," Nathaniel corrected. "And I said no. I chose this. I chose you." That night, everything changed. We called my lawyers, who nearly had heart attacks but found loopholes, technicalities, ways to structure things so the marriage could be validated retroactively once Nathaniel's divorce finalized. It was risky, illegal in some interpretations, but it might work. For 3 weeks, we lived in limbo. The investigation intensified. Victor pushed for an emergency hearing. Nathaniel met with Alexis one final time, signing whatever papers needed signing, ending a marriage that had clearly ended long ago. I watched him through it all. The way he was gentle with his ex-wife even while saying goodbye. The way he paced my apartment at night, clearly missing his ranch but staying anyway. The way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't watching. When the divorce finalized, we remarried the same day. A different courthouse, a different judge, but the same silver rings. This time, when we kissed after the ceremony, it wasn't for show. The hearing took place 2 days later. Victor sat across the screen with a smug smile, confident he'd already won. He presented evidence of our rushed marriage, called it a sham, called us both frauds. Then my lawyer presented the new marriage certificate. Valid, legal, airtight. Victor's face twisted with confusion and rage. He demanded to know about Nathaniel's previous marriage. Nathaniel stood up. He admitted the truth, that he'd been separated, that the first ceremony had been desperate, that we'd had to wait for his divorce to finalize. Then he said what no one expected. He said he'd fallen in love with me. Not for business, not for appearances, but because I fought for what mattered, because I treated him like a partner, not a prop. Before Victor could react, my lawyer presented new evidence. Email records showing Victor had hired the hackers. Bank transfers proving he'd paid investigators to dig up dirt, including bribing the ex-wife of someone at our company to get information. Financial documents showed he'd been planning to sell Castellano agri-tech's patents to the highest bidder the moment he took control. Security footage followed. Victor meeting with competitors, discussing asset liquidation. The room went silent. The board suspended the hearing immediately. An hour later, they reconvened. Victor was removed from the board, banned from the company, and facing criminal charges. My position was secured. Nathaniel and I were recognized as legally married. When the call ended, I collapsed into Nathaniel's arms, shaking with relief and exhaustion and something deeper. He held me, and I realized that somewhere along the way, we had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. We didn't just survive together. We chose each other. After the hearing, everything settled into something that felt almost normal. Victor was gone, his allies scattered, and the threat hanging over us finally lifted. The company felt different after that, like it could grow again instead of just surviving. Nathaniel didn't return to his ranch permanently. He kept it, hired someone to manage the day-to-day operations, but Boulder became his home. Our home. He joined the company officially, bringing his practical farming knowledge to our tech development. His insights transformed our approach, making our solutions more accessible to actual farmers instead of just looking good in presentations. At home, life settled into something steady and real. Mornings became shared routines. He made coffee while I reviewed emails. Evenings found us on the balcony, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold. The guest room slowly became his office. His flannel shirts hung next to my blazers, his boots by the door beside my heels. We argued sometimes about his need for open spaces versus my love of the city, about late-night work calls that interrupted dinner. But those fights ended in understanding, not distance. We learned how to meet in the middle. For the first time since my grandmother died, my apartment felt full again. Almost a year later, near the anniversary of our second wedding, we made a decision. Not because of a will, not because of a board, but because we wanted to. We held the ceremony at Nathaniel's ranch under the wide Colorado sky. No luxury, no pressure, just wildflowers, string lights, neighbors, and friends. I wore a simple white dress that moved with the wind. Nathaniel wore clean boots and a nervous smile. We wrote our own vows, honest ones, about choosing each other despite impossible circumstances, about building something real from something fake, about love that surprised us both. When Nathaniel slipped the ring, the same silver band from our desperate courthouse wedding, on my finger, I realized how far we'd come. What started as desperation had become love. What began as a contract had turned into a life. Now, when we sit on the porch of the ranch on weekends, the mountains stretching out before us, I think about that first day I drove up in my black SUV, desperate and afraid. I came asking for a husband. I stayed because we chose each other. And somewhere in Colorado, Alexis found her own happiness, Nathaniel found peace with his past, and I found something my grandmother had always wanted for me. A partner who saw the work as more than just business, who understood that some things are worth fighting for, and who chose to stay even when he could have walked away. The company thrives now. Nathaniel and I lead it together, protecting small farmers, developing sustainable technology, honoring my grandmother's vision. And every morning when I wake up next to my husband, I'm grateful for desperate decisions, complicated truths, and second chances at first marriages.